guessing these ticks are really bad. Could be worse. Oh boy, that was close. Yep, still pretty mediocre ticks, but damn. Surprised I managed to actually find an extra squeeze on this. I'm kind of surprised the ticks were that bad because I was using a new method for that last phrase of the last act, where I use the extended hit window fret trick. I'll have to go back and review that. Maybe something funky happened with that mechanic, but it should complete all of those sustains. So I'm also not that surprised because I've had it with that third and fourth act. I was just so sick of throwing away runs to those when they really shouldn't be that big of a factor. I'm not going for 319, so there's no like immediate need to ball out on ticks. But yeah, the third act, that is just so irritating, going for that early whammy into activation. I just try to activate on the first tempo line, but it's just really hard to time stuff when you're in the middle of whammy like that. Or at least it is for me, I'm just not good at it. The fourth act is where ticks could really be improved. As you can see, I didn't even bother going for extended hit window on that because I just cannot stop red flaming the front end when I try. Your window for abusing it is just so microscopic, and nerves by that point are in effect really after Act 2. So yeah, unfortunately I just had to do a traditional act there, which really bites into ticks, of course, because the back end is a triple chord. What are you gonna do? I mean, not suck, but what am I gonna do? I'm gonna bitch out. And the last act, man, I honestly just got super lucky there. I don't know why I just started strumming in the middle of those pull-offs after the front end, but thank God that did not just cause an overstrum like it probably should have. And just not choking on the last solo in general is just really nice. Or the back end. It's not like it's a strict act, or it shouldn't be frame data wise, but again, nerves and just how awkward everything is around that second solo in that act. So as for where the song can go, I did test this out since my first run through, and the upper bound first act, which is the green, is possible, but I'm actually not even sure if it's possible on Xbox. I've mentioned this in a few past videos by now, but I found some differences in how the buffered first frame whammy mechanic works on Xbox compared to PS2. The only one that I'm almost positive about is that it doesn't work on hopos. So if you strum, hold down the input of whammy, hold down the bar and activate the hopo, it doesn't work. The only aspect of it that I know does work is on sequential sustains of the same fret, like the Killing in the Name first phrase, or something that mimics that, like the Collide first phrase for the last act, where it's not technically the exact same fret, but because you can hold down blue and orange, it works the same way. I'm not sure if you'd be able to cheese that by using the extended hit window fret trick. I think I've tried that in tasks and it didn't work, so I kind of doubt it. I don't know, the mechanics of that are extremely complicated. Sorry for sidetracking myself. All that is to say that the first act upper bound was a 3-frame window with using buffered whammy on all of the initial chords. So the blue-orange chord behind the yellow-orange chord, the yellow-blue chord behind the red-blue chord, and if I'm not forgetting anything else, the yellow-orange chord behind the red-blue-red hopo sequence that precedes it. Again, I have no confirmation if any of that works on Xbox. If it doesn't, then the act is likely impossible by a frame, because that's 3 buffered first frame whammies. And generally on like average tempo tracks, 1 frame of whammy equals 1 frame towards an activation. That's just what I've been seeing lately. So yeah, it may barely be possible on Xbox, but I kind of doubt it. The nearly ideal act that I'm doing here is 11 frames. Of course, that's also including that buffered whammy, which I'm not going for, and again, probably doesn't work on Xbox. So that's more likely an 8-frame window. Still fairly tight with all the whammy on it, but you can make it pretty consistent. The big thing I was worried about with doing this nearly ideal act was dropping a bunch of ticks on the red sustain that precedes the triplet. That red sustain pretty much goes into the green, and so I'm kind of confused why I'm not dropping more ticks on that. I'm trying to use extended hit window to just strum on the red and then pull off to the green. Obviously you could use the extended hit window fret trick by holding down the red while activating the green pull off, but being able to do that while setting up a good extended hit window act on the red hammer on after the green would be very difficult. I gave up on that pretty quickly. The execution is just insane for the timing. If that sustain were a different fret like yellow, that would be the way to go for it, but yeah, just releasing the red and then reactivating it precisely like that is just a little too hectic. At least for everything going on in this song, because Act 1 is just Act 1. Act 2, I struggled with this a ton my first time through. Just again, the bigger squeeze act that I'm using here that ends on the red. One small reason I was struggling with that was the fact that at that point, when I first did this, I didn't know how sequential sustain whammy works, where basically you can hit it early or on time and you'll get the same amount of whammy, but if you hit it late at all, you lose whammy. And at that point I didn't know that hitting it early would, keep the same amount of whammy. There's just weird mechanics in this game. That's logical that it works like that, but you never know. And so back then I don't think hitting those sequential blue-orange whammies early. It just didn't end up affecting the first act much because the bigger squeeze first act is just so lenient. But yeah, I did not struggle with the second act really much at all, this grind, which is really nice. That's what I was honestly worried most about, of trying to redo this with the nearly ideal first act. Anyway, as for the expansion on there, the nearly ideal act is possible with the green. It is only 4 frames with using the buffered whammy on that first blue-orange, which means it's likely 3 frames without doing that. But a 3-frame act with 4, and not only 4 whammies, but 4 reset whammies, which means you have to re-input a fresh whammy on each one, since they don't continue off any of the previous, and that is ridiculous. That means if you do 8 frame-perfect inputs for those early whammies, you still only have, it's still an extended hit window exclusive act, which is fucking crazy. And I had absolutely no delusions of going for that. The big act that I thought would maybe be the bridge to 319 here was the 5th. Not necessarily to do with timing, but just because the execution on the act itself is so much simpler compared to the others. But unfortunately the upper bound, which is just getting another note on here, is a 3-frame window only with 4 or so whammies. It seems like it should be very close to within reach, but yeah, it's just one of those, because the notes are spread out so much. Now, the whammy for that act honestly is not that bad. You have the initial green, and then the blue that's connected to it, so you can just do an extended hit window strum on near the end of the green and then make sure you get max whammy there. You might lose a couple ticks, but you know, that's the price you have to pay for going for crazy acts. And then from there, I think it's just the yellow-blue chord whammy and then the 2 blue oranges. And since they're so close together, you get continuous whammy off the first blue orange. So whammy for that act is not the worst thing, but just getting those frame perfect strums to activate the notes would be really difficult, particularly on the blue orange, I think, without dropping yellow blue. But I don't know, this is after I've done Psychobilly upper bound, so I guess I shouldn't be saying stuff like that. But anyway, that all is just to say that whammy for that act would be very hard to optimize, and that's just to make it, again, an extended hit window exclusive act. So I just lost faith in my ability to go for that as well. Especially just because getting to that point is so hard already. And the last act, the nearly ideal, is also possible, and the frame data for it is not too bad. It's a 7-frame act with buffered whammy on the first blue sustain and then the first yellow sustain. Now, getting buffered whammy on that yellow hopo sustain would be damn near impossible because of how close together the notes are. So I don't know how viable that would be. But I think if you were able to properly utilize the method that I tried to use here, then you could get some decent whammy for that. I probably hit the following red sustain late, if I had to guess, because my whammy just was not good here. Something I'm pretty sure happened to that second phrase. In addition to that, even this front end execution on the last act is not fun. But doing that one is even worse, especially if you're trying to push tick super hard for 319, because the act is on the orange strum that starts that sequence behind the orange sustain. And that act's frame data, I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, with both of those buffered whammies even, is only 7 frames. Now again, compared to like the second act, nearly ideal and stuff, it doesn't sound that bad. But you lose frames on an act like that so quickly with this kind of whammy. And again, on Xbox, where I know the buffered whammy mechanic doesn't work, specifically, that would make it, again, probably a 5-frame window. And with that kind of obnoxious as hell execution on the front end, and then even still, the back end's not the worst thing in the world, but you do have to form the back end chord, properly on time. That could be a bit of trouble. So, yeah, this song theoretically has a long way to go, just like Less Talk and Beast in the Harlot. I just don't know how viable any of it really is past this point. Obviously, you can improve this by ticks pretty easily, quite a bit, but as far as additional squeezes, I just don't know. They all seem very, very difficult, even just in a vacuum, let alone with the other squeezes or later in the run with nerves and everything. So this is probably as far as I'm going with this. I would have liked some better ticks, but again, I just had to appease those stupid 3rd and 4th acts that just would not give me a break. But I'm happy to get 318.7 anyway.